Tonight, we will be sharing 4 stories. The first story is a Halloween-themed story I know you guys will enjoy. Then I will be telling 2 more stories, one involving some weird happenings late at night, and the other, a group of friends who entered the wrong cave. Story 4 will be a little different, because I won't be reading it. Tonight, we are blessed with a feature from Vidith22. He is an incredible narrator, who has a similar taste in stories as myself. He has his own channel that will be linked in the description, so if you enjoy his narration, be sure to check him out. I feel it is worth mentioning the rest of the videos this month will be collabs. I've been incredibly busy lately, but luckily the community is kind enough to help me out. Similar to tonight, some of these collabs may surprise you, so I hope you guys are excited for it. I'm hoping that come November I can get back on the ball and start posting similar to how I was during the summer, but I've definitely done enough rambling. A huge thank you to the writers for allowing us to share their stories. Please remember to drop a like if you enjoy, as it helps out the channel in a real way. Subscribing if you're new is also very much appreciated. Enjoy the video, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. We didn't have much to do, not in Cairo, Georgia anyway. Not like the one in Egypt. Instead of pyramids, we had our beloved Cairo High syrup makers. But besides those Friday night lights, we didn't have jack shit. Just an old theater and a downtown museum. Not much us 12-year-olds could do, even this close to Halloween. After all, I was in that awkward life cycle. Too old to trick-or-treat, but too young to get shit-faced in ugly costumes. Trapped between heaven and hell, like juvenile prisoners, my friends and I reported to Washington Middle every day. Then on the weekends, us 12-year-olds ran wild in the small city limits, entertaining ourselves as best we could. There was me, Bryson. I was chubby back then, far from tall, far from the man I'd become, but I was still a handsome kid with light hair and a friendly laugh. Of course, not until 10th grade did I shed the baby fat and start dating girls. In middle school, I watched football and R-rated comedies, not to mention raised hell with my best friend Blake. Blake was like a scrawnier version of me, maybe the stupider version as well. I may have been country, but Blake was well on his way to becoming a pure Cairo redneck. Aside from the messy black hair and loud southern voice, Blake was also more outgoing than me, the leader in our 2-man army. As a couple of small-time delinquents, we did most of our damage at school, Washington Middle a dumping ground for our wild antics. Mr. Haskell, our English teacher, particularly hated us. He was a writer who never wanted to teach, and Brad Haskell called us out in every single class, always with his dark sense of humor. Needless to say, he was a horror writer, and honestly, he was our favorite teacher for being wacky rather than strict. But like robbers getting more confident with each heist, Blake and I's enterprise soon extended beyond our shitty education. When Mom and Dad dropped me off at the movies, my Friday nights went from cheap horror movies to pot and running wild downtown. Blake and I would walk through cemeteries, make prank calls. Together, we'd turn Broadway Street into a ding-dong ditch dungeon. Halloween was the perfect time for us. The fresh autumn air gave us fuel for our endless energy. The scary decorations, a beautiful backdrop for our asshole antics. There were always fun things to do, whether it was the hay rides or haunted houses in Colquitt and Stanwyck. The local thrills and chills gave us a reliable laugh, a Halloween high that dominated our Octobers. But there was one Cairo legend we hadn't quite explored yet, one dare we'd never confronted. Yeah, we'd been to Mrs. Gacy's abandoned farm. At midnight, we trespassed onto the Holton Street Slave Cemetery, but throughout our friendship, Blake and I had never gone to Clive Burke's house. Mr. Burke was a small-town weirdo. Like a haunted castle, his 2-story brick house stood alone in the back of a large lot. The tall trees and high grass formed a fence for his eerie fortress. Clive's house surrounded by only a graveyard of abandoned lots and stores. And for the last 40 years, he lived all alone. During October, the house was especially notable for its Halloween decorations. There were the tall scarecrows in his trees, the rubber bats by the mailbox, handmade wooden mummies and werewolves lining up down his dirt driveway. And above all, he had an abundance of glowing jack-o'-lanterns surrounding his home, from the front porch to the windowsills. Jack-o'-lanterns lit all night and day, all year. Not once did Mr. Burke take those decorations down, and no one ever asked him why he left them up. Everyone too scared to go out to his yard, and when Halloween rolled around, the decorations only got scarier. Our parents always gave us the lecture on Clive Burke. He wasn't the boogeyman, just an eccentric, older guy. A wacky, fruity artist from Colquitt. He hadn't left Cairo in 40 years. Or left his inheritance. Burke's old family home was now his tomb. We were told Mr. Burke was in his 60s, that he had long, stringy black hair and wore baggy dark clothes. Burke was tall, eccentric, his intense hazel eyes complemented by stark white teeth. But Blake and I didn't know for sure. After all, we never saw him. Not once did Clive leave that house. Everyone said Mr. Burke was harmless, but those decorations still freaked us out. Especially the pumpkins. From afar, they lurked like hovering orbs off in the distance. And they looked so much brighter in the fall, so much more alive. Their glares were harsh, and their smiles carved wide open to scream with mocking laughter. But tonight would be different. Blake and I would finally visit the old Burke house, and on Friday, Blake and I met at the Cairo Theater. Our alibi perfect. Stay late watching the new Kevin Hart movie before walking back to Blake's mama's house. We were alone and had the night to ourselves, both of us dressed in our standard gear of jeans, Aeropostale tees, and skinny hoodies. Here it was, the second week of October, and Blake and I were all set to kick off the Halloween festivities. A quick game of Ding Dong Ditch with one of Cairo's weirdest residents. This was our biggest challenge yet. Confidence pulsated through Blake and I. We'd even managed to get a few girls' numbers. Got a chance to smoke a cigarette in the high school campfire of parked pickups right outside the theater. We felt like hot shit, and felt even hotter once we snuck out the back exit. The strong wind no chance against our rising excitement. Holding our cell phones, we strolled down the city sidewalks. Under the darkness and dim street lights, we walked past Broad Street's empty stores, past the smiling witches, the cackling inflatable ghosts. Blake and I's playful banter and forced chuckles were a weak way to feign toughness, especially the further we got, the more isolated we got, and especially once the sea of shacks and derelict buildings gave way to Mr. Burke's cryptic castle. Oh shit. Blake's high-pitched southern accent squealed. He pulled me to the edge of the dirt driveway, the mailbox more dilapidated than a neglected tombstone. Already I felt waves of unease. The bitter wind whisked through my soul, and Blake and I were just getting started. "Come on, Bryson," Blake shouted. No hint of caution anywhere in his voice or demeanor, not for us 12-year-old troublemakers. "I am," my own high-pitched voice shouted back. Blake stopped in the middle of the driveway. We stood in darkness, nothing guiding us except our phones and Mr. Burke's field of Halloween decorations. The glowing creatures and mini jack-o'-lanterns looked brighter than ever, their smiles wider, all of them seeming to stare right at Blake and I. The mummies, the scarecrows, and the pumpkins all watched us, as if they were part of Mr. Burke's personal scary security team. And through my anxiety, I realized the yard was their permanent station. They were always here. Playful, Blake punched my shoulder. "Hey, you're going with me, right?" I stared into Blake's wild, eager eyes. He shook from excitement rather than the chilling weather. "Don't bitch out, Bryson," he added. Nodding, I pulled my hoodie in tighter. "Yeah," I said, trying to stave off my stutter. "I just don't want to get caught." Blake cackled with glee, the exuberance of a career middle school crook while on display. "Well, nah, we ain't." He punched my shoulder again. "Let's get his ass." With that, Blake took off, and I let him lead the way. Our feet waded through tall grass, scrunched huge leaves. All I could hear was a howling wind, Mr. Burke's black and orange wind chimes, and my own beating heart. Up above, scarecrows glared down upon us like gargoyles. This close, I now saw how big they were. Life-size scarecrows. Some in modern t-shirts, some in old suits and dresses. Their handmade hats made of sharp straw. None of the guardians looked very friendly. These weren't the hayride strawmen from downtown Cairo. These scarecrows were the guards of a cornfield from hell. The late night breeze gave the other decorations literal life. The mummies, the witches and zombies, even Dracula. Their slow movements made for an eerie taunt, and they still watched us as we made our way to the front porch. Sticking his arm out, Blake stopped us a few feet from the door. There were no lights. Nothing except the insane arrangement of jack-o'-lanterns. Big jack-o'-lanterns, positioned all around the house, on every windowsill. Together, they provided enough candlelight for our cult ceremony. Faded black paint covered the porch and its rickety steps, rather than rocking chairs. There were 2 more scarecrows positioned by the tall red door. The pair dressed like an elderly couple, complete with raggedy farm clothes, and straw hats straight out of the Great Depression. Cute by day, creepy by night. The windows around the door revealed another row of those jack-o'-lanterns. Blake and I were greeted by the same crooked smiles and carved eyes. They were our terrifying audience for the night, and witnesses for the stupid crime we were about to commit. Desperate to avoid the glowing glares, I looked over at the red door, over at the entrance to Halloween Hell. Next to it, a small doorbell awaited us, as did whatever lurked inside Mr. Burke's house. Another chill ran down my spine. The wind chime's slow chorus made me scan the yard once more. At all the creatures of the night, they were still watching us, and somehow, the decorations seemed closer. I felt Blake's harsh tug grab my arm. "Let's go," blared his attempt at a whisper. Nervous, I pulled away from him. "No," I muttered. Blake confronted me, his anger offset by a childish playfulness. "Come on, Bryson," he yelled. "No, I think we should go," I said. Annoyed, Blake tilted his head back. "Whatever." Trying to stay on Blake's good side, I reached toward him. "Let's wait and do it tomorrow." Chuckling, Blake approached the porch. "Nah, I ain't no chicken shit." I started to follow him. "Blake." "Just stay there, you coward," Blake teased. Like a defeated soldier, I stepped by the front porch, surrounded by sinister scarecrows and monsters, surrounded by nothing but the autumn cold and my own chills. I folded my arms. The nerves ate me alive. "Hey, watch this, Bryson," Blake said. Struggling to battle the breeze, I faced Blake. His boyish grin shined through the dread, as did his rebellious spirit. The wind chimes behind me roared through the night. The wind grew only heavier, but my eyes stayed glued to the sight before me, toward Blake. With mischievous malevolence, Blake crept up the creaking porch, right past the towering scarecrows. "Watch me," Blake hollered out. His southern scream and ferocious footsteps the only sounds through the silence. Cautious, I took another step, my curiosity a catalyst for my spectating. The old couple scarecrows stared straight at me, straight into my soul. "Blake?" I whispered. Giggling, Blake reached toward the doorbell. "I got you," he struggled to whisper. "Blake," I cried. Through the worry, I placed one foot on the stairs, letting the step groan beneath me, and then the loud doorbell erupted, an orchestral ring. Displaying a wicked grin, Blake faced me, his smile wider than ever, his eyes wilder than ever. "Let's go, Bryson," he yelled. Like a wild animal descending upon helpless prey, the male scarecrow reached out, their movements stilted, their face stilted, and their grip vicious. My heart sank. My chills turned crippling. Within seconds, the scarecrow wrapped their wiry arms around Blake. Blake's cries a shrill siren no one would ever hear. "Bryson," Blake yelled in desperation. "Help me." But I stayed frozen in fear, more helpless than an elderly ding-dong ditch victim. Trapped in the scarecrow's grip, Blake struggled to break free, his ferocious squirms useless. "Bryson," he screamed. The door creaked open. Bright light from inside blinded me. The candlelight so immense, so many more jack-o'-lanterns waited inside. From what I saw, the sneering pumpkins populated the whole house, and together they threw a spotlight on the scarecrow, on the tall, lanky figure, the dark cobwebs of hair dangling from under his straw hat, his eyes even darker, his smile so cryptic and white. Sure, I'd never seen the man. I'd only heard about him. Mr. Burke nothing more than a figment of Blake and I's wild imagination. almost a Cairo myth. Only right now, Clive Burke was a terrifying reality, and within seconds, he dragged my best friend inside the house. Mr. Burke never said a word, his steps quick and precise, even as Blake's screams swirled through the night, up until the door slammed shut behind them. Simultaneously awestruck and horrified, I staggered forward. "Blake?" I cried. Like knives, the wind pierced through me as I ran up the porch stairs, the candles illuminated by heightened fear. I turned the lock knob, banged on the heavy door, but I got nothing, only silence. "Blake!" I screamed. Frightened, I looked all around me, but I was alone with Mr. Burke's scarecrow wife. Her gaunt gaze was fixated on me, and so were all those jack-o'-lanterns. Their grins horrified me, their collective fire blinding. Their triangular eyes further fueled my panic, their eyes of many colors. Now closer, I faced the windows, then the ground, at every single spot in Mr. Burke's homemade pumpkin patch. What I saw wasn't orange, nor were there any loose seeds or hollow yellow guts. These were human heads, rows and rows of them, the more moldy pumpkins, nothing more than rotten flesh. Their horrified eyes and screaming expressions made all the more ghoulish by Mr. Burke's carving and craftsmanship. The only signs of life in each of them, a flickering candle shoved deep in the excavated skulls. These weren't just innocent decorations. Together, they formed a corpse collection Mr. Burke had spent decades cultivating. "Oh God," I screamed. Clumsy with fear, I stumbled away, straight into the old woman's scarecrow. Instead of brisk softness, I collided into a cold cadaver. Felt the woman's bony hands press against me. I could see her purple dress sticking to a decaying body. The stench so awful. Yelling, I jumped out of her dead grasp, and then the woman's entire head tumbled off. The burlap sack of straw landed at my feet, the only part of her body that was actually a scarecrow. My horrified eyes stared on at the severed neck, at the dry blood drenching the dress collar. Like more decorations, live spiders and worms burrowed deeper into the neck gore, desperately seeking shelter after losing their roof. Shivering, I felt tears well up. I couldn't utter a scream, not even a horrified whisper. My gaze darted throughout the yard, toward all those other scarecrows, toward all the other victims. An agonizing creak pierced through my panic. I rolled around, and in eerie slow motion, the red door swung all the way open. Now, even more lights hit me. The brightest, biggest candle yet. My trembling gave way to an avalanche of tears. My soul went still. Fear latched into me. And there, my best friend's terrified expression stared back at me. Not even the fresh slices could conceal Blake's scream, nor his eyes wide open in pain. Placed right in the doorway, Blake's severed head was Mr. Burke's scariest Halloween decoration yet. Let me start by saying I have OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. For those of you who don't know, it's a disorder where you have an inexplicable urge to repeat certain actions, organize things obsessively, or in some cases, avoid germs at any cost. It's affected me throughout my life, though I've gotten over the worst of it. Believe it or not, I wouldn't touch doorknobs until I was 15, even the ones in my own house. Still, I have some lingering compulsions. The way it manifests itself now is in my nighttime routine. Before I can go to sleep, I have to go around my house and make sure all of my electronics are off. Lights are off, my sinks aren't running, and my doors and windows are locked. I have to count them as I go, and I repeat the process 3 times. I use a flashlight to light my way on the second and third count. I also have to do it in a certain order, starting in my living room and ending in my bedroom. If I don't do it, I can't sleep. Knowing the process wasn't completed keeps me up at night. It becomes all I can think about. In my small 2-bedroom house, I have 16 light switches, 2 TVs, 1 desktop computer, 4 sinks, 12 windows, and 2 doors. All in all, the counting takes me 15 minutes to complete. It takes 30 minutes if I lose count and have to restart. Since it can take a while, you can imagine my dismay when things in my count started to be off. A few days ago, I was making my way through my house, counting my light switches, sinks, doors, and electronics all at once. My front door, aka door number 1, as well as the first 2 windows were locked. The nearby light switches, numbers 1 and 2, were off. My living room windows, 3 and 4, were locked, and light switch 3 along with my television was off. My kitchen sink and light switches, numbers 4 and 5, were also off. Windows 5 and 6 were locked. I was at light switch number 8, the one that lit the staircase to the 2nd floor. When I noticed it, a light was on downstairs, light number 3. I sighed and started over, being sure to check that I'd turned them all off. Again, I'd made it to light number 8 when I noticed light number 3 was on again. This time I was getting mildly annoyed with myself. I wanted to go to sleep, but I knew I had to start my count over first. I did, and that time I finished it without issues. The next day a similar problem happened. That day I was on my 3rd round, so close to being finished. When I'd realized the light was on, it was number 1. The one that lit the area around my front door. Like I said, I count everything multiple times, so there is no way I would have made it to my 3rd round without realizing that light was on. It put me on edge, but I rationalized it to myself, believing I was just stressed from work. I turned the light off and completed my count once again before finally going to bed. It was like that the following night too. I completed my first 2 rounds when I noticed light number 8 was on. I went to shut it off, and fear crept down my spine when I heard people talking. The sound was coming from my living room television. Somehow, it had turned on. At this point, I was a bit too freaked out to consider it a coincidence. I went to check my front door to find that it was unlocked. Panic set in as I searched my house. "Whoever is here," I said in the deepest, most intimidating voice I could muster. "I am armed. If you leave now, I won't hurt you." All I really had on me was a kitchen knife, but my goal was to scare a possible intruder away. After searching my house thoroughly, I realized that no one was there. I nervously restarted the count before heading to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I found my door unlocked, and lights 10, 4, and 6 on. A small stream of water from my bathroom sink 4, was running too. I wouldn't have been able to go to bed if I had left my house like that, so I had no clue how it happened. I went over to my sister's house to sleep that night. While I was there, I asked her a few questions. "Anne, did you lend someone my house key?" "No, of course not," Anne replied. Are you sure no one else was able to get to it?" "You're the only person besides me who has a copy," I continued. "No, Mike, no one touches my keys but me," Anne answered. "Why?" "No reason." "Is everything okay?" she questioned. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I reassured her. It was just a dumb question. I didn't want to worry her, but the fact that I was spending the nights when I lived just down the road couldn't have helped. She didn't press too much, but I know she could tell something was off. The next day I went home, and things seemed to return to normal. That was until I climbed into bed. I closed my eyes for a second when I heard talking. I sat up and saw that my bedroom TV was on. So was my bedroom light. I left my room only to find that every light and every electronic was on. The sinks were running full force. The doors and windows were unlocked too. I put up security cameras in the morning. I had to see who or what was doing this. After I finished my count, I headed to sleep, only to be awoken from my cell phone alarm. I didn't even remember setting one. I shut it off and realized my bedroom light was on again. It was 4 a.m. I went to my office to review the footage and saw that my computer was glowing. With a deep breath, I went to watch what I'd recorded with the security camera. I was hesitant to start the video, almost afraid of what I would find. Could it have been an intruder? Maybe it was a skinwalker. What scared me the most was the idea that maybe it was some sort of haunting. Nothing could have prepared me for what I caught on tape. I watched the video silently. At first, it was as you'd expect. I was walking around the house, counting everything, making sure it was all off. Now, this is where things get weird. In my 3rd round, I was turning everything back on. Mind you, I didn't recall doing this. I then crawled into bed and fell asleep. It wasn't even 5 minutes later when I got up. I reached for my phone, and I assumed that's when I set the alarm. Afterwards, I went into my office. and just stared at the camera for a few minutes. I cursed a bit as I watched the video. My mind raced with questions. Why? I whispered in confusion. Why can't I remember any of it? Why am I doing this? As soon as the words left my lips, I noticed that I was no longer just staring blankly into the camera. I was smiling. The smile never left my face as I turned to get a piece of paper from out my desk, as well as a pen. I wrote something on it, then folded it and tucked it into my pajama pants pocket. I winked at the camera, and that's where the video cut off. Slowly, I reached for my pocket. Sure enough, there it was. I pulled out the small piece of paper and unfolded it. I, or whatever creepy counterpart I was watching, already knew exactly what questions I would wonder. On the paper was a short answer to why this was happening to me. Because we all tend to go a little crazy sometimes. Never split up in a cave. Never. Keep your friends close. Watch them. Don't let them leave your sight. My friends Alan, Mara, and I, Jenna, go cave exploring all the time. Nothing too crazy. We just go poking around for a while. Until this day, until this cave. Never again will I go in one. But if you choose to, don't split up. To preface this story, Alan has protan color blindness. This makes most colors appear to be shades of green to him, especially red, orange, and yellow. For this reason, me or Mara always have the map. They're often color-coded, so he can't read them well enough to lead. This cave exploration was like any other, at first. It was a simple cave in our local woods, but it felt cold. Looking at it made you feel cold. Call me crazy, but I could almost hear a low-pitched hum coming from it. Ew, this one is freaking me out. Mara muttered to us as we stared into the entrance. I could hear the echo of water dripping from the ceiling onto the ground. Yeah, me too, but we're already here, I said with a sigh as I pulled my flashlight out of my backpack. Just thinking about taking those steps in made me want to scream at myself to turn around. We stepped in and a horrible, rotten egg smell smacked us in the face. This is what Alan smells like when he doesn't shower, Mara laughed. Alan lightly shoved her as we walked. They each had their own flashlights. As I shined mine ahead, they used theirs to look around at the walls. Yo, look at this, Alan said, and stopped walking to admire the cave wall. There were 4 long scratches on the wall, red pools of blood on the ground, and half-eaten deer carcass laid beneath it. Oh, how lovely, I say to him. Wait, did a bear do that? Maybe we should go back. Mara said with a quiver in her voice. Why didn't we listen to her? Why didn't we turn around? I think it'll be okay. It's not hibernation season. They wouldn't just be in here. He reassures her. We keep walking until we come to a fork in the road, so to say. 2 tunnels. Which one do we go in? Mara asked. I shined my light in the right one, then in the left. I can't put my finger on it, but the left felt bad. Let's go left, Alan said, taking a few steps forward. I put an arm on his shoulder to stop him. Wait, let's weigh our options, I said. He looked at me, then the right tunnel, then the left. No, the right side is giving me the heebie-jeebies. My dad always said to listen to your gut. I looked at him, then the right tunnel, then the left. Why don't you tell us what... I said, turning my head to Mara, but she wasn't there. Mara? I screamed. This isn't funny, Alan says, shining his flashlight all around. Guys, I'm in here. Come on. We hear her voice coming from down one of the tunnels. Which one did you go in? How did you even get past us? I called after her. Come on, I won't wait for you slowpokes. I heard. Her voice was fainter. You go right, I'll go left. Take this walkie-talkie and when you find her, or if I do, buzz, Alan says. God, why were we so dumb? I grab the talkie and walk my way in. It gets colder and colder the deeper I go. My feet splashed in puddles around me. I shined my flashlight everywhere around. I was terrified of an animal coming at me. Something on the ground caught my eye. I thought it was a dead snake at first. I picked it up. A long lock of black hair, and it was soaked. I look at the ground. Clumps of black hair everywhere. Mara's hair is auburn. This wasn't her. Disgusted, I threw the hair back on the ground. It's common for homeless people to live in the woods when there is no shelter. This probably came from some poor mentally ill woman. I pushed forward and finally found her. She was facing the cave wall with her back turned to me, soaking wet, and she was scratching at the wall like you would scratch someone's back. "Mara, what the hell are you doing?" I asked her, standing several yards back. Something about this feels off. Mara, what the hell are you doing? Mara. She whispers to herself. I take a step forward and she stops scratching. My walkie buzzed and I jump. I look down and pulled out of my pocket. "I found her," Ellen says over the talkie. I freeze and look up. She's gone. "Alan, run." I say into the walkie as I sprinted back the way I came. Every now and again I could feel breathing down my neck. I could hear, Mara, what the hell are you doing?" echoing around me. I reach the entrance to Fork, and Mara is there and I freeze. "Where the hell did you guys go?" she said through sobs. I was cautious of her, but she looked normal, completely dry except for her tears. "We were looking for you. You were in the cave," I said between pants. "No, I was right here. You guys just went into the caves without saying anything," she said. She ran up and hugged me. She squeezed my arm the way she always did when she hugged me. I felt light as I realized this really was Mara. Alan came running out of the cave next, panting and crying. "God, you're both okay," he says and embraces us. "I want to leave right now," I say as I cry too. "Yeah, me too. We're never coming back," he says as he leads us out of the cave. We exit the cave where we came in and began our walk out of the woods. I still felt unsettled, like something wasn't right. Almost like when you forget something but you can't remember what it is. "You know, the scariest part was the deer carcass," Mara joked, trying to lighten the mood. We all chuckled. "It was pretty gnarly," I said to her. "Yeah, blood freaks me out. I hope I never come across anything red ever again. That was too much even for me," Alan says. My blood ran cold in that instant. Mara and I stopped walking and looked at each other with the same horrified expression. Alan stopped walking a few feet in front of us. "Oops," he said in a hushed voice, too deep and raspy to be his. Whatever that thing was, it didn't know Alan was colorblind.
The following account is taken from the journals, correspondence, and patient files of Dr. Eric Nielsen, a brash young psychiatrist. The factuality of events described hereafter is contested to this day, and the general consensus is that Dr. Nielsen slowly lost his mind, falling into severe neurosis. There are others, however, who believe that Dr. Nielsen stumbled upon something truly horrifying. Dr. Nielsen's journal entry, June 18th, 1998. Today's the day I finally guaranteed. 8 long years of schooling is now behind me. I can't believe it. I am now Dr. Eric Nielsen. I wish my dad was still here to see it. Mom says she felt him at my graduation ceremony. She's sure he was there in spirit. Sometimes I wish I could have the faith that she does. She's always so sure of everything. I guess I've just seen and learned too much to believe in life after death. Even so, it was a nice sentiment, and the thought of a ghostly version of my dad watching me get my degree did bring a smile to my face. I can't wait to start applying for residency. Elaine says I should just shotgun my application to every hospital in the Tri-County area. She's my rock. I don't know what I'm going to do without her around. I know she only has 1 more year of school left, and I know I'm going to be busy with applications and interviews, but oh, how I'm going to miss her smile. I think I'll take her advice and apply to all the hospitals in the region. Except St. Agnes, of course. The only way I'd ever apply to that dump is if every other hospital turns me down. As if that would happen. Email correspondence, February 24th, 1999. Dr. Nelson, thank you for your interest in a residency at St. Agnes Hospital. Unfortunately, we are unable to offer you a spot with us. We wish you luck in your endeavor. Sally James, St. Agnes Hospital, Psychiatric Ward Administration. Letter to Elaine, Bennett, February 26th, 1999. Hey, I got rejected from St. Agnes. I don't know what to think. Oh, Elaine, I wish you were here. I know you only have a few months until your graduation, but every day away from you just makes me feel more alone. I was so sure I would get into residency right out of the gate. I still can't believe it's been 8 months. Maybe I'm not meant to be a psychiatrist. Great, huh? 8 years of school and how many thousands of dollars down the drain. I know what you'll say. I know you'll tell me not to give up and to keep pushing forward. I know. Just keep applying. I'm going to start looking out of state, and that scares me. How far away am I going to end up? What will happen to us? I can't help thinking about the future. I want to marry you, Elaine, but I have to find a job first. I mean, a real one. Working at the Gas and Go is not the illustrious career I had in mind while searching Freud and Jung. I want to be a psychiatrist so much. I just want to help people. Love, Eric. Letter to Elena Bennett, May 11th, 1999. Elaine, I got a residency. I can't believe it. It's a small hospital upstate. I don't even remember applying to it. I did what you said and just blasted applications everywhere. I probably couldn't tell you half of the places I'd put in for, but you were right. It paid off. The hospital is called Greenwood Manor. It's not very well known. I can't find a website for it, but it's a mental health asylum, so no ER, no blood. I'm so excited, Elaine. I start in 2 weeks. Hopefully I can take the time off to come to your graduation. I really don't think they'll have any issue with it, as it's still a month out. I'm so grateful to you. You never gave up on me. I owe you so much. I can't wait to marry you. Love, Eric. Letter to Elaine Bennett, June 21st, 1999. Elaine, I'm so sorry I missed your graduation. Thousand Pines and Greenwood Manor are a bit crazy. It turns out that the hospital is really small, only 30 patients. The staff is really small as well. There's the groundskeeper, one nurse, and the chief psychiatrist. Oh, by the way, the chief psychiatrist is yours truly. I wasn't hired for a residency, but as the primary doctor. Crazy, huh? I was shocked. Apparently the previous psychiatrist died suddenly, and they had trouble finding a qualified candidate who was willing to come up here. Thousand Pines is a tiny little town, basically in the middle of nowhere. Not many doctors willing to leave big hospitals for such a downgrade, but for me, a young psychiatrist just starting out, I feel like someone hit fast forward on my career. It's been hectic, though, learning the ropes. My nurse, Betty Morin, has been great. She reminds me of your Aunt Tilda. I'll come down and see you soon. And hey, with my new salary, I can afford more long-distance calls. No more waiting for weekends. All my love, Eric. Patient report, Anderson, Lucille, June 23rd, 1999. Miss Anderson's case is a classic. She believes she can see and communicate with ghosts. So far, she seems stable in all other aspects, but she says the ghosts tell her to do things. She checked herself into the hospital because she was worried that she might follow through on one of those more dangerous whispers she believes she hears. She told me today that Greenwood Manor has more ghosts than anywhere else she's ever been. That made me chuckle. Patient report. Ashcroft, Daniel, June 27th, 1999. Mr. Ashcroft suffers from severe dissociative identity disorder. Every time I visit him, I'm not sure who I will be speaking to. As of today's visit, I have chronicled 13 distinct personalities. I see little hope for improvement, and I regret to say that I believe Mr. Ashcroft will most likely spend the rest of his life here in Greenwood Manor. Letter to Eric Nielsen, July 1st, 1999. Eric, I miss you so much. I understand how busy you are. I know you blame yourself for not being able to come and visit, but you're helping people. You're doing what you meant to do. I know that's so deep in my heart, but life is boring without you. I'm coming up to see you, darling. I have a whole week free. We can start planning the wedding. All of my love, eternally. Elaine. P.S. I can't wait to be your wife. Thousand Pines Gazetteer article, July 2nd, 1999. Deadly crash claims life. Oak Hills resident Elaine Bennett, 24, was killed in a violent crash on Highway 72 last night. Miss Bennett was on her way to Thousand Pines to visit her fiancé, Dr. Eric Nielsen of Greenwood Manor. The unfortunate incidents occurred just after 10 p.m. Miss Bennett's sedan collided headfirst with a semi-trailer heading the opposite direction. The driver of the semi is currently being treated for minor injuries at Indigo Country Hospital. The sheriff's department had stated that no charges will be brought against the semi-driver. All evidence points to Miss Bennett unexpectedly swerving into the path of the truck. It is unclear whether Miss Bennett was under the influence when the accident occurred. Funeral services will be held for Miss Bennett in Oak Hills on July 9th. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, July 9th, 1999. Elaine's funeral was today. It rained all week. It somehow seems appropriate. Mom tried to console me, but there wasn't much she could do. I know she understands how I feel. She lost Dad. I just can't face the reality of not seeing Elaine smile ever again. Writing this is hard. I just want to sleep, but I know that rest won't come so easily. I'm heading back up to Greenwood Manor in the morning. I want to get back to work. I feel like that's all I have left. Patient report, Jones, Craig, July 29th, 1999. Mr. Jones is convinced that he is King George. His delusion is harmless enough. He has presented no violence towards himself or others. He is here at his family's request. I quite like Mr. Jones. I hope to find a treatment path to help him return to his normal life. Memo to Nurse Betty Morin, August 8th, 1999. Betty, can you please ask the groundskeeper to wait until morning to do his work? He kept me up all night with the racket he was making outside my window. Dr. Nelson. Memo to Dr. Nelson, August 8th, 1999. Dr. Nelson, we don't have a groundskeeper. I'm not sure who was outside your window last night. Perhaps a vagrant. I can call the sheriff's department to file a complaint, if you'd like. Betty. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, August 8th, 1999. I don't get it. I could swear we had a groundskeeper. I've seen him almost every day, plodding along out in the grounds. He was even pruning the roses under my window last night. Maybe Betty is right. Maybe he's just a vagrant looking to get work. Betty offered to call the cops, but I told her not to. I don't want to make them come over here for something so simple. If this guy becomes a problem, then I'll call to have him taken away. He seems harmless enough. Patient report. Sanders, William. August 12th, 1999. Mr. Sanders suffers from the delusion that there are insects crawling beneath his skin. He must be kept in restraints at all times as he is prone to self-harm. Last week he bit a large portion of his own flesh off of his arm. The infection in his wound is coming along, however, and the bandages should be able to be removed soon. There is a new medication that I would like to try for Mr. Sanders. I'll be writing a prescription later this afternoon. Hopefully the Thousand Pines Pharmacy will be able to fill it quickly. They will most likely have to have it brought up from a larger city. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, September 3rd, 1999. So the pilot light went out on the furnace today. I had to go down to the basement to relight it, and I found an old locked door tucked away in a corner. I'm not sure what's behind it. Probably some sort of supply closet. It has a large brass lock on it, though. It looks really old, and it's kind of cool for how old it is. I was surprised by the lack of rust. The crazy thing is, I swear I could hear weeping and moaning coming from behind the door. It gave me a bit of a shock at first, but then I realized that there are probably vents connecting to some of the patients' rooms. This place has new things to discover every day. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, September 10th, 1999. Betty quit. Mr. Sanders bit her while she was trying to feed him. She said she'd had enough and that she was going to find a less troubling job. I completely understand. I never thought that this would be so hard. Dealing with actual patients, seeing the effects that their psychosis have on them is widely different than reading about it. I've come to know these people over the last 4 months. It hurts to see what they have to deal with. I honestly wish I could take it all away from them. I lie awake at night, crying. I never thought I would be that guy. It's all just so much to cope with. Thousand Pines article, September 26th, 1999. Thousand Pines nurse missing. Miss Betty Morin, a former nurse at Greenwood Manor, has been reported missing. Miss Morin quit her job 2 weeks ago, and her daughter, Carrie, reported her missing on the 22nd. It's so unlike her, Carrie Morin says, to just disappear and not let me know where she's going. Indigo County Sheriff's Department says their investigation is ongoing, and that they cannot reveal any details at this point in time. Sheriff's Report, September 29th, 1999. The body of Betty Morin, 49, resident of Thousand Pines, was found in Greenwood Lake at approximately 14:30 on Wednesday, September 29th. Miss Morin was reported missing by her daughter 7 days prior, on Wednesday, September 22nd. Autopsy results indicated no foul play, but copious amounts of alcohol in her system. It is suspected that Miss Morin drowned in Greenwood Lake accidentally. Case number HMTP 11641 is closed and ruled as an accidental death. Sheriff Paul Hattersley. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, October 14th, 1999. I can't find anyone to replace Betty. There aren't many nurses in Thousand Pines, and the few that are here already work in the medical clinic. I can't get anyone to come from out of town either. I guess being the sole nurse to 30 psychiatric patients isn't too appealing of a career prospect. I also can't reach the administration company that owns this hospital. No one even answers their phones. They have no answering machines set up, and every email I send comes back as undeliverable. I think the stress is really getting to me. It was hard enough keeping up everything with Betty here to help me. But I'm not getting a lot of sleep with how much work there is to do. I swear I saw Betty walking down the hall. Of course, when I shook my head and looked again, there wasn't anything there. If I start having regular hallucinations, I'll have to lock myself up with the patients. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, October 24th, 1999. I'm scared. I admit it. The things I've been seeing are getting to me. I saw Betty again. She was standing on the second floor, gazing out a window. I called out to her, but she disappeared. I know it's not real. I know that these things are my mind playing tricks on me. I'm sleep deprived, I'm stressed, and I'm heartbroken for my patients. I know that Betty is dead. She can't be here. I miss her, though. Her warm laugh, her tenderness with the patients. I know that's why I keep imagining that I see her. But then, why don't I see Elaine? I miss her more than anything. It hurts so much knowing she's gone. I wish that I could see her walking down the halls. Maybe that's why I don't. Because I want it too much. I know how complicated the human mind is. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, November 5th, 1999. I took a trip into town today, just to clear my head. The cool fall breeze was wonderful, and I realized how stuffy this hospital can get. I made sure all the patients were taken care of, fed, medicated, and secured. Then I walked down the hill to the diner on Main Street. I know I didn't have much time to myself, but it was a welcome break. I started to feel like me again. I ordered a slice of pumpkin pie and some warm apple cider. I was about halfway done when two young boys walked through the door, talking animatedly. I swear, it's true, the redhead said to his friend. This old, crazy doctor was obsessed with immortality. He studied ancient cultures and rituals. They said he found a way to steal the souls of others to keep himself alive. Then he built Greenwood Manor so we could have a steady stream of victims. No one would miss the loonies. Ice flooded my veins as the redhead's friend laughed the story off. I couldn't finish my pie. I paid and left, walking briskly back up the hill. I checked on all my patients. They were all still fine, but I wasn't. Why had I been so shaken? It was just a story, told by a prepubescent kid trying to frighten his friend. As I walked down the hall towards my room, I swear I heard footsteps right behind me. I refused to look, though. I am a rational man, after all. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, November 6th, 1999. Miss Anderson's delusion took a weird turn today. After her regular checkup, she didn't want me to leave. There was a terror in her voice, and she was shaking. I sat down beside her bed and asked her what was wrong. Truthfully, a part of me wishes I hadn't. What she had to say chilled me to the core. He's watching you. Always watching. I asked her who was watching me. He stands above all, overseeing everything. Up, 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 high. I patted Miss Anderson's hand and stood to go, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. But she wasn't finished. No one ever leaves. They're all still here. Even after they die, they can't move on. He tied them here, won't let them go. Down, 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 down. It's in our bones. Dr. Nelson's journal entry, November 7th, 1999. I saw him again. That fucking groundskeeper. He was in the hospital. At 1 a.m., no less. I was pissed. He was just standing there in the cafeteria. I yelled at him, told him to get lost. He didn't say a word. He just smiled at me and turned and walked down the hall, deeper into the hospital. I'd had enough. I followed him, ready to really let loose and give him a piece of my mind. I walked down the dimly lit hallway and saw him go into my office. The office I kept locked at all times. The office whose key I had on me. Yet there he was. The door hung wide open, and he just strutted in there like he owned the place. I followed him in, ready to vent. He stood there behind my desk, pointing at the back wall. I stumbled over my words, confused at his behavior. "What do you want?" I asked him. He just smiled again, still pointing at the wall. Then he walked through it. I yelled and ran out, back to my room. I don't have any idea what I saw. Ghosts aren't real. They can't be. I know I've been seeing things lately, but it's just the stress. I calmed myself, focusing on being rational, coming with the explanations that were frankly more ridiculous than ghosts, but that nonetheless helped me to calm my terror-stricken heart. I resolved to get down to the bottom of this mystery. I scrounged up my courage and I went back to my office. I walked in the door, half expecting to see him spinning in my desk chair, but no one was in sight. I breathed a sigh of relief and stepped forward. I began inspecting the drywall, looking for cracks, for secret levers, even for a well-disguised curtain. But I found nothing. The wall was solid. I knocked on it, gingerly at first, then harder. A hollow echo reverberated. There was an empty space behind the drywall. I looked around for something heavy to swing, my eyes landing on the wooden nameplate Elaine had sent me after I got the job. I hefted its weight in my hand. Its solid construction begged to be swung at the wall, and the memory of Elaine gave me the strength to hammer it home. The drywall gave way, bit by bit. Once there was a decent-sized hole, I peered through. It was dark, but it appeared to be an extension of the office. I kept up my attack on the plaster, throwing in kicks here and there for good measure. Soon enough, there was room for me to crawl through. Light filtered in, dust floating in the air from my repeated battering. There was another desk, a few chairs, and a degree on the wall, and a newspaper on the desk. It was open to an article about a missing doctor. The date was from 1911, and the picture was of the groundskeeper. My stomach leapt into my throat, and the chill wind seemed to swirl around the hidden space. As my eyes scanned the newspaper article, I noticed something else. A large brass key set right below the print. A large brass key that looked to match the large brass padlock on the door in the basement. I grabbed it, without thinking. Its metal was ice cold in my hand. It was heavier than it should have been. Dread shot through my veins. I clambered back into the light of my office. The fear did not subside, and so I ran back here, back to my room. I put the key on my bedside table. That was 2 hours ago. I'm still terrified, but I feel a pull towards the key, towards the door in the basement. My heart tells me to wait. Wait until sunrise to go down there, or better yet, to throw the key away, to pack and leave, to go back home to Oak Hills, but I can't. I can't get it out of my mind. I know I'm being irrational. I'm letting fear drive me. I have to go down there. I have to open that door and prove to myself that I'm reading too much into this. I'm going down there. I'm going to open the door, see that it's just an old storage closet. Then, I'm going to make Mom's old cocoa recipe and go to bed. I am a rational man. Thousand Pines article, November 9th, 1999. Horror at a mental health hospital. Greenwood Manor, the asylum that sits just outside of town, was home to a horrific discovery this morning. After receiving an anonymous tip, Indigo County Sheriff's deputies were sent to investigate the hospital. They discovered all 30 of the psychiatric patients dead. They appeared to have been bludgeoned to death. The administrator of Greenwood Manor, Dr. Eric Nielsen, was found alive in a small room in the basement. Authorities said that Dr. Nielsen was babbling incoherently and covered in blood. Dr. Nielsen was uninjured, but was admitted into the psychiatric ward of Indigo County Hospital. The Sheriff's Department declined to answer whether Dr. Nielsen is a suspect in the murders. Sheriff Paul Hattersley. Journal entry, November 17th, 1999. I can't get it out of my mind. I've never seen anything so horrible. I've investigated strange cases in my time. Indigo County is not the quiet mountain locale everyone thinks. There's a dark history here. Even so, I'd never come across such a gut-wrenching scene. So many bodies, beaten and bloody. I'll never forget the smell. And poor Dr. Nielsen. Such a shame what happened to him. He was a nice young man. He didn't deserve this. The local paper wants me to pin the blame on him, charge him with the murders, but I know he didn't kill those people. There's something evil up in Greenwood Manor. Always has been. I've never liked this place. Every couple years, the entire staff changes. There have been several disappearances and strange deaths, but everything was always circumstantial. Old folk tales built up around the hospital. We told the press that we found the doc in a room in the basement. But that wasn't the half of it. It was actually a large stone pit. There were strange engravings on all the walls that looked as old as the hospital itself. Everyone knows the stories of old Marcus Hightower, the guy who built Greenwood Manor back in 1908. He did strange things up there, occult rituals, they say. Then he disappeared one day. I don't think he ever actually left. I'm going to do what I can to close that hospital, for good. No one needs to go in there. Patient report. Nielsen, Eric. March 6th, 2000. Dr. Nielsen came to us several months ago, after a severe psychotic break. We believe it was stress-induced. Dr. Nielsen showed no signs of improvement. Indeed, he seemed to drift further and further away from reality. Most days he was catatonic. Unfortunately, Dr. Nielsen was found dead in his room yesterday morning. The cause of death is uncertain at this time. The autopsy was performed by Indigo County Coroner's Office, and they're quite confused. According to their report, Dr. Nielsen was in the advanced stages of severe degenerative bone disease. They say his skeletal structure was akin to that of a 9-year-old, than a man of Dr. Nielsen's 26 years. What is even more perplexing is a medical report from a physical Dr. Nielsen had last summer. There were no signs of skeletal degeneration at that time. How he could have contracted DBD and then had the disease progress so rapidly is astounding. Dr. Nielsen's family has agreed to allow further research to be conducted on his body. Thousand Pines article, June 26th, 2000. Greenwood Manor to reopen. Under the direction of Dr. Marcus Hightower, Greenwood Manor, site of a grisly mass murder last November, will reopen as a fully functional mental health hospital. Dr. Hightower is the great-grandson of the original founder of Greenwood Manor. He is hoping to help the town of Thousand Pines move on from the horrible incidents that occurred at the hospital and honor the legacy of his namesake. "She's got good bones," Dr. Highwater said. "It'd be a shame to let such a beautiful building remain tarnished by such a dark event." The hospital will have a grand reopening celebration on August 1st. A barbecue, live concert, and charity raffle will be part of the gala.